There's this belief in photography, especially landscape photography, that you have to get everything perfect in camera. No cropping, no fixing it later, just pure photography, whatever that means. But here's the truth. Some of my best images weren't perfectly composed in the field. They were actually carefully cropped in post. Not because I was lazy, but because I was thinking ahead. So if you're clinging to the idea that cropping is cheating, you are holding yourself back. Let me show you exactly why shooting for the crop is actually one of the smartest creative decisions that you can make while you're on location. Now, before we jump right into these details, I want to show you this image here because this is a great example of this. It's important to understand exactly what the problem that this is, or I should say the problem that this solves. So this is the example. So here, if I come up here to the crop tool, as you can see, this is the raw file here. There is nowhere for me to move this outside. And as you can see, these huts here are very close to the bottom of this frame. And you see how much this is leaning right here? This was shot with a wide angle lens, 14 millimeters. I was pretty close. So there's this the natural distortion of these huts. So I want to be able to use the transform tool and kind of bring them out to where they're a little bit more straight, the way they looked in real life. But in order to do that, I left myself no room here at the bottom to crop this further. I can't crop out, I can only crop in. So that is a major issue right here. Here's another good example. This is a photograph I just captured just last month in my Dolomites workshop. And as you can see, I was in a rush and I cut this rock off here. I really love the fog building through here because it kind of had this S curve and it followed the lines of the mountains. But I got too close to that as well. And when I come up here to the crop tool, I can't crop it out. I can't pick up that area of the rock I clipped. I can't give this beautiful cloud area any breathing room on the side. It's all too tight. I can move it up and down, but I can't go left and right. I did not leave myself any additional latitude there. And this is where shooting for the crop really comes in handy. And basically the I guess simplified premise here is to photograph wider than what you envision the final scene to look like. So this is a scene from the Smoky Mountains earlier this spring. If I come up here to the crop tool, you can see how I have cropped this. And this is kind of what I had the vision in my mind when I was on location. This is kind of how I envisioned this final image to look like. You have this beautiful area here in the bottom thirds. You have the bridge over here in the upper thirds, and then I have the water or the stream kind of S-curving down from the bridge across and out the bottom right-hand corner. That's kind of how I envisioned the overall scene. But I shot it much wider than that. As you can see, I picked up a little bit of extra room on the left side and a whole lot of extra room on the right side so I can have that cropping flexibility in post. And then there's a lot of reasons to do this, not just for compositional, I should say, techniques or compositional refinement is probably the best way to say it. There's quite a few other reasons to do this, but this is a good example of shooting for the crop. Another example from the Faroe Islands last year, I believe. If I open up the crop tool, you can see how this image was originally cropped. I envisioned it a certain way, but I ended up picking up a lot more room on the right side and a little bit more room on the left side, just so I can make these further refinements, because I don't really like that area there. It's a little bit of a distraction. So I'm gonna bring it in just a touch to about something like this right here. But I have that flexibility now in post because I ended up photographing this quite a bit wider. And I think that this looks substantially better here than the uncropped version, where the right side here just goes off a little bit too far. It looks a little bit sloppy in my opinion. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot of reasons to shoot for the crop besides just compositional refinement. One is aspect ratio. So for instance, right here, this is the way I have it cropped right now. Let me just hit reset. If I want to crop it, say specifically for Instagram, if you want to, Instagram's got a very specific 4x5 vertical crop. So if I come over here to 4x5, you can see that I have this flexibility because look how wide this photograph was shot, or how tall. I've got a ton of room at the bottom. I've got plenty of room up here. I didn't clip any of these clouds. So if I wanted to put this into 4x5, I can put that right here just like that. Or maybe I want to do a 1x1, a square. I love a good square crop. I have the ability to do that as well right here. Or maybe I want to do 8.5 by 11. I can hit the shortcut key X to flip this in a different orientation. And you can see that I have that right there. But like I mentioned, by shooting for the crop or shooting a little bit wider than you need, you have a lot of compositional flexibility. Panoramic photography is another great example of this. If I come up here to the crop tool, let me reset this. You can see how wide this is, or how much room is at the top here and at the bottom. So if I come up here and I want to do a pano, come down to say 16 by 9, kind of bring this side over just to kind of clean this area up here. bring that over a touch, bring this down, and now I've got a beautiful panorama right through here. And the only reason that's possible was because I was shooting for the crop. I had in mind that this looks like a beautiful panorama, and I wanted to shoot this a little bit wider, so I have that creative flexibility in post. I really like the way this one looks right here. Another good example is centering the main subject of a photograph. You know, a lot of times you aren't sure when you're on location exactly how you want a scene to look. And if you just go with one specific mindset and just lock in and zoom all the way in to create that what particular look, you might get yourself in trouble when you go to crop. So this is a good example right here. You can see how I have this image cropped. This is from the Smokies. If I hit reset right here, this is how the actual photograph came out. This is the full image, but I want to be able to center this stream right through here because it's a very simplistic photograph, and I often like very simplistic images to have the subject right in the center. So I'm gonna bring this over a little bit just to kind of get the spill of that waterfall in the dead center. I want to be able to pick up all of the fan of the outflow of the water here. And let's go ahead and close this down. And I really like this here, but if I got too focused on a very specific type of a crop and I zoomed in too much, I might not have had that cropping flexibility in post in order to do that. But I really like the way this looks right here. You can also use these grid overlays when you're in camera, or I should say when you're out in the field on location. Most cameras have the rule of thirds grid that you can put up in the viewfinder or on the back of the LCD, which is very helpful. This is an image I posted online last week. This is the raw file here. And if I open up the crop tool, you can kind of see I have the rule of thirds overlay here. And then this right here, come into the library module, go over to the final image. This is it here. And this is how I actually cropped it. So you can see that I have the church here right on the rule of thirds line in the bottom right-hand corner. I have the mountains on the upper left-hand corner here. And you kind of get this nice diagonal flow, visual flow of this image. And I really enjoy that. But because I shot this image so wide right here, I had a lot of cropping flexibility to go ahead and make those changes in post. So I had that in mind when I photographed this. Now, when should you not shoot for the crop? I would say that there's very few reasons not to shoot for the crop, but one of the big ones is if you happen to be using a very old camera that maybe only has, I don't know, 8 or 12 megapixels, and you don't have a lot of resolution, you might want to, you could still shoot for a crop a little bit, but you want to be cognizant if you're going to be doing any kind of extreme cropping, because you're really going to be lowering the overall resolution of that photograph. Most modern cameras today, like my Z8 is 40 plus megapixels. I mean, they go from, I don't know, 25 megapixels on average all the way up to over 100. So cameras today have a ton of resolution. So you've got a lot of cropping flexibility to go in on all edges a little bit, and you're not gonna lose any type of perceived resolution at all. But as far as best practices are concerned, this is a good example right here. This is an image from Norway earlier this year. I always like to shoot wider than really what my subject matter needs. This is a good example right here. If I hit reset, you can see that this area where the light is hitting, there's a little bit of atmosphere. This whole area in the center is definitely the star of the show. This is the main subject. And this area on the left and the right doesn't really add much value, but I wanted to shoot it much wider so I had cropping flexibility to do whatever I wanted to in post. If I wanted to do a 4x5 vertical, I can hit the shortcut key X to flip it. I can do that. You can see this is the image up here on the left, how that would look. I could come up here, I could do 1x1 if I wanted to. Let me reset it. And actually, I think I did have this in 1x1 to about right there. And I really like that, but definitely shooting much wider. I'm sorry, not much wider, but shooting wider than what you think you need is definitely gonna help you out. And like I mentioned earlier, using those crop overlay grids, that's a beautiful thing. You know, this is the final image of this right here. I'm sorry, this is the raw file. This is the final image right here. As you can see, I really just cut off the bottom here because this was just a little bit too much. This is the way it looks. Let me put them together on the screen so you can see them both at the same time, like this, shortcut key N. So this is the raw file on the left, and then this is the completed image right here. There are adjustments on this file here, but this is the raw composition. So as you can see, I just brought up the bottom, and I really like the way that this looks here. But as you can see on the final image, if I pull up the rule of thirds, you can see that this is kind of, area of interest here, area of interest here, and then you got these two sides and the waterfall flowing right in between the two. So using those, the crop overlay grids, and there's a ton of them them inside of Lightroom. When you pull up the crop overlay, you can hit the shortcut key O, and you can toggle through all of these different kinds of overlays. It's very, very helpful. And a final best practice, and this is really important, is to keep areas of interest away from the sides. So basically, well, let me just show you here. This is a good example from Italy. You know, let me go to develop module, do the crop tool here. You can see that the area on the left and the right, there's nothing that was really areas of interest here. This is an area of interest. This is an area of interest. The mountains area are obviously major areas of interest in this scene. And none of them are right on the edges of the photograph. So what I like to do is I'll compose my photograph exactly how I think I want the final outcome to be when I'm on location. And then I'll just zoom out a little bit to give myself that cropping flexibility in post. And that's exactly what I did right here. This is really how I envisioned this photograph to look when I was on location, but this is how I shot it. So I did have the ability to crop it many different ways, but I just wanted to bring this left side in because there wasn't much value over there. Bring this right side in just a little bit, kind of come down just a touch to something about like that. And I think that that looks pretty good right there. But just being cognizant and being very aware of where you're putting the subject matter in your scene, just make sure that you're not putting anything right on the extreme edge of your scene. Try and keep those things away from the edges, and that's gonna help you when you are composing with the crop tool in post. But shooting for the crop is by far one of the things that has improved my photography the most. I can't tell you the last time I shot a photograph on location and I did not crop it when I edited it at all. I cropped just about every single one of my photos. So shooting for the crop is a very helpful technique that I wanted to share with you all today. If you have any questions about anything I covered here in this week's video, please leave those in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back in touch with you as soon as humanly possible. And if you enjoyed this week's video, if you could, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and as always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend it with me here today. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.